So, hi, Survi. Thanks so much for being with us here on ASA. Could you tell us a bit about your film?
This film actually started with a friend of mine, a historian friend of mine who works in the region and has been working for many years and has worked very closely with the Mir community as well, as in, and has written a lot about it. Not published academic pieces, but he actually has a blog that he's been writing and. I've been following his work for many years, so I knew about the Mir community and I had a sense of the music as well. Uh, so it started with, because I've made quite a few films on music. Started with him inviting me and taking me to the community and visiting different people and different villages, uh, in the hope that I would start documenting the the people who were now quite old. Many were had passed on. So he said, I really think you need to come and take a look and see if you can begin archiving. So it started with that invitation, and actually that was also the prime focus, prime intention of mine. It took me many years to raise funds to start going with the camera. In the interim time, I actually ended up staying in touch. Uh, in fact, visited the village, I think, twice in the interim time, and interim time is already 6-7 years. So eventually, I got a grant for a film. I still didn't know the shape of the film, but I knew that the film will help me, will emerge out of this archiving project of mine. So I began shooting in 2016. I shot 2016, I shot 2017, I shot 2019. So I had done, in those 4 years, I had done probably six trips. I think, yeah, 4 or 6 trips. No, 4 trips maybe. I can't remember for sure. Went at different times, different seasons. I really wanted to document seasons. And then when I came back, my editor and I started looking at the material. And I said, okay, now I'll sit and figure out what is the film I want to make. But then the pandemic happened, and the pandemic really messed things up for me. And then the shifting political terrain made it seem even more daunting to get permissions, because it's a border area. You have to get central and state level permissions. I started feeling that getting those permissions is only going to end up taking time. So around 2023, we had already done one round of editing of our material, but more just to create sequences to understand, okay, what is going to be the shape of the film. Around 2023, I basically turned to my editor and I said, I don't think I'll be able to go back and shoot, or it's going to be too much of a challenge. So let's start looking at this material and see if there's a film in it. Um, so then my raw research material, in a sense, I've just sculpted a film out of that.
So, your body of work has also consistently explored communities through their relationship with music, whether it's been Jahaji music or Vidisha in Bombay or even Phese Samparana. So, can you tell us a bit about your relationship to music and why is it that you also keep returning to it in different
Yeah.
forms through each film?
So, when I started making films, my first couple of films were actually pursuing what I was most invested in, which was the uh, issues around labor, especially in the context of globalized or globalizing economies, particularly in India. And that was really, like, I made three or four films around those theme. In fact, following the theme of garment workers in sweatshops, garment workers in factories, women garment workers. Around 2003, a very dear friend and somebody whose work I admired deeply, Tejaswini Niranjana, she had this project she had been talking to me about, her book project. And she asked if I would come along with her to the Caribbean for completely out of the box kind of a plan, which as a documentary filmmaker, I was completely not convinced. But just the excitement of just jumping into just like a deep end of a pool was very was fun. So I went along with her and a very small crew to the Caribbean and shot for almost what was it, 6 to 7 weeks, and came back like shooting copious amounts, like continuously, and came back, and then I had to start figuring out again over there what the film is. And I found that because we had filmed so much music, that was what the project was about. I found that when I was trying to, and that in fact Diksha was the editor for that as well, um, when you had to take into account music, rather than use music as a vehicle or a explanatory kind of a track, I found that the sense of time in music or the stories embedded in music, way people look at each other while performing or the way the audience, I suddenly realized that dealing with that kind of material had was completely changing the grammar of that I was getting used to in my own practice, and this was like shifting it completely, and that was very challenging but also exciting. um, so I great difficulty and very little money, I finished that film. And then I felt like, Arey, this is something sparked my interest, and that film was on East UP Bihari migrants to the Caribbean. So when I came back to my city, which is Bombay, Mumbai, I started wanting to follow that story, the Bhojpuri migrant in Mumbai. So I worked on that, and then again now here it was the audience and music and sites of music production that was coming into my story, and again, uh, totally different shape from the Caribbean, but I really liked how it challenges the way I structure. And then Phir Se Sam Pe Aana was about spaces of music where music has gone silent and communities who have been erased out of the music production. So that was, all of these are, in a sense, research projects where the research starts giving shape to the form and aesthetic. But everywhere music was really messing the way I was thinking of shooting, of composing, of cutting, in ways that felt like every time I was making film, I felt like this is the first film I've ever made in my life, because you just couldn't go back to something you have tried out previously. So that's how this music thing continued.
Yeah, speaking of this continuation, it's also these musicians speak about lay or rhythm. So I was thinking about you want if you would like to talk a bit, and you spoke about the structure and developing the structure and how music also feeds into all of the parts of filmmaking. But would you like to comment on this relationship between rhythm and how that led to the form of this film?
Even from the generic Rajasthani music that one is familiar with, or the rendition of Sufi music in the Patiala Gharana, Punjabi, both Pakistan and India, which is far more popular and we are more aware of. There's that thika, that rhythm is in your face. It's really, that's what draws us in. So the first time I heard the music here, I was struck by the fact that it's a very different sense of the way music sort of, plays out. Uh, to the extent it almost felt like like that slowness of Drupad. It took me some time to realize that many of the much older singers, including two that you saw in the film, who were close to 80s, 90s, in fact, one is 103, that they were trained in classical. And so it's the younger ones who didn't get that training. So now here, suddenly I had a very different sense of rhythm. And then the song is always about the shortage of whatever it is in the landscape, of resources, of water, and a sense of longing, you know. So so the two had to then start talking to each other. But also we had music where we could pretend to make a film that pretends that music is alive and throbbing, but I also wanted to account for the fact that it is not. So the moderator, the way he called it a fractured concert, I really like that. I'm going to borrow that phrase from him, because I did want to keep long lengths of music, but then also actually, lots of people told me, "Are you crazy?" Of title is music in a village named 1PB, and the first sound on musical note you hear is at 24 minutes. So I said, but for 24 minutes, people are talking about the lack of music. So it is a music film. But yeah.
Thought was interesting because there's so many different kinds of loss that you're actually archiving, not just about music, but I think also of a certain kind of relationship to one another. There were any new songs that they were writing that were reflecting any of this?
So unlike Bidesi and Bombay, where nobody wanted to give me a song that they had heard as children or from their grandparents, and everybody was writing a new song every day and writing about the traffic jam or the mobile phone or whatever. Here was the exact I think the only mention of a song that was written was by the father of the man who wants to get into Coke Studio, who says he writes songs, but mostly they're really dipping into a very deep repertoire, which the whole film was really about the loss of memory, because it's just not in the landscape anymore. Which is why when Mir Mukhtiar says about his grandchild that उसके जहन में जा रहा है, it sort of hits you that it's there, but it's getting lost.
The title of the film is also pointing to the irony of naming and the idea of fixing identity. But at the same time, I think the film succeeds in showing us that perhaps within the music of the Bhakti and Sufi traditions, there is a way in which we can perhaps move through this moment. So I was wondering if you want to, just in terms of ending, think about like how the community and its own resilience and what that maybe teaches us for this moment.
Yeah, for me, that this was, I think, maybe one of the very few films where right at the beginning, before I knew the film, I knew the title, because it just hits you that you're listening to 15th, 16th century music in a village that they haven't even bothered to name. These are first villages, these are new villages, and so what does that mean? I don't mean, of course, resilience is there, but I don't know whether it's the resilience or that sense of uh, being pragmatic, that this is our profession. If it's not giving us money, then some of them are saying, what do we do in our profession to make ourselves get an audience? And the others are saying, as the old man keeps saying, every time has its own thing, and this is not the time for that. And he's so correct, because we have lost our ability to imagine that an old man with his prayer beads can say Bismillah and break into a Shiv mantra because the people who had spent 3 hours with him are leaving. How much ever we want to hold on to it, I think the attack on that way of being, I don't know. Yeah.